दूरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां भावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुन्दारिणम्। यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। कथाञ्चन स्मृते यस्मिन् दुष्करं सुकरं भवेत् स्मृते प्रीतं स्यात् श्रीचैतन्यं नमामि। Okay, so let's resume.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances.
Yes, Vadri.
Prabhuji, should I share the screen?
Yeah, please go ahead and share. Yeah.
We have to start with chapter 23. That's correct?
I'm not.
Yes,
This is the chapter numbers. What is this? Why study this? I was definitely looking at the screen. Why study the Vedanta Sutra? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Who would like to read today?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Can I read?
Yes, Vadri, please.
Thank you. Chapter 23, Why Study the Vedanta Sutra? Knowledge is information gathered from the scriptures, and science is practical realization of that knowledge. Knowledge is science when it is gathered from the scriptures through the bona fide spiritual master. But when it is interpreted by speculation, it is mental concoction. By scientifically understanding the scriptural information through the bona fide spiritual master, one learns, by one's own realization, the truths of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is different from material manifestations, and it is above the reactions of matter. Unless one scientifically understands the spiritual form of the Personality of Godhead, one becomes an impersonalist. The example comparing the Lord and the material manifestations to the sun and the sunshine is often given. The sunshine is in itself is illumination, but that illumination is different from the sun. Yet the sun and the sunshine are not differently situated, for without the sun there can be no sunshine, and without sunshine there is no meaning to the word sun. Unless one is freed from the influence of the material energy, he cannot understand the Supreme Lord and his different energies. Nor can one who is captivated by the spell of material energy understand the spiritual form of the Supreme Lord. Unless there is realization of the transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no question of love of God, and without love of God, there is no perfection of human life. Just as the 5 gross elements of nature, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether, are both within and without all living beings in this world, the Supreme Lord is both inside and outside this existence, and those who are his devotees can realize this. Pure devotees know very well that they are meant to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that all things that exist constitute the means by which they can serve the Lord. Therefore, because a pure devotee has been blessed by the Supreme Lord from within the core of his heart, Wherever he looks, he sees the Lord and nothing more. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:255 confirms this relationship between the pure devotee and the Supreme Lord as follows. Vishrujati hridayam na yasya sakshat dharir avashabhihito ape aghaugha nashaha pranaya nashanaya Tritangri Padmaha Sabhavati Bhagavata Pradhan Uktaha. If a person's heart is always tied to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord with the rope of love, the Lord does not leave him. Indeed, even if his remembrance is not perfect, he is to be considered a first-class devotee. An example of this is described in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:34, where the gopis assembled for their rasa dance with Krishna. Krishna apparently left them. Consequently, they began to chant the holy name of Krishna and, being overwhelmed with madness, inquired about Krishna from the flowers and creepers in the forest. Krishna is like the sky. He is situated everywhere. Therefore, by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we can learn about our eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, understand the procedure for regaining Him, and attaining the ultimate realization, which is love of Godhead. Next, Lord Chaitanya explained to Prakashananda Saraswati how one can achieve the Supreme Personality of Godhead by devotional service. First, the Lord quoted a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:14-21, in which Krishna says that he can be realized only through devotional service executed with faith and love. Indeed, it is devotional service alone which purifies the heart of the devotee and elevates him to the ultimate realization, by which he serves the Supreme Lord with faith and love. Even if one is born in a low family, like a family of chandalas, dog-eaters, one can become filled with transcendental symptoms through realization of the supreme stage of love of Godhead. These transcendental symptoms are mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:331. Smarantaha smarayantash cha mitho aghaugha haram harim bhaktaya sanjataya bhaktaya vibhrate utpulakamatanu. When pure devotees discuss subjects dealing with the Supreme Lord, who can cleanse all kinds of sinful reactions from the heart of his devotee, they become overwhelmed with ecstasy and display different symptoms due to their devotional service. The Bhagavatam 11:240 also states, when pure devotees chant the Lord's holy name, due to their spontaneous attachment for the Lord, they sometimes cry, sometimes laugh, sometimes dance, sometimes sing, and so on, not caring for any social convention. We should understand, therefore, that Srimad Bhagavatam is the real explanation of the Brahma Sutra, for it is compiled by the same author, Vyasadeva himself. In the Garud Puran, it is said, Artho ayam Brahma Sutranam Bharatarth Vinirnayaha Gayatri Bhashya Rupo Asau Vedartha Paribramhitaha Grantho Ashtadasha Sahasraha Srimad Bhagavatabhitaha. Srimad Bhagavatam is the authorized explanation of the Brahma Sutra, and it is further explained of the Mahabharata. It is the explanation of the Gayatri Mantra and the essence of all Vedic knowledge. This Srimad Bhagavatam containing 18,000 verses, is known as the explanation of all Vedic literatures. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the sages of Naimisharanya asked Suta Goswami to explain the essence of Vedic literature. In answer, Suta Goswami presented Srimad Bhagavatam as the essence of all the Vedas, histories, and other Vedic literatures. Elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam 12, 13, 15, it is clearly stated that Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta knowledge, and that one who relishes the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam has no taste for studying any other literature. In the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, the purport of the Gayatri Mantra is described. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Truth. Thus, from the first verse, Srimad Bhagavatam deals with the Supreme Truth, which is described in the Bhagavatam as the source of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the cosmic manifestation. Obeisances unto the Supreme God, obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Vasudev, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, directly indicate Lord Sri Krishna, who is the divine son of Vasudeva and Devaki. That Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead is more explicitly presented later in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.28, where Vyasadeva asserts that Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead and that all others are either his direct or indirect plenary portions or portions of those portions. Srila Jiva Goswami has still more explicitly developed this subject in his Krishna Sandarbha, and Brahma, the original living being, has substantially explained the subject of Sri Krishna in his treatise Brahma Samhita. The Samaved also verifies the fact that Lord Sri Krishna is the divine son of Devaki. In his prayer, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam first proposes that Lord Sri Krishna is the primeval Lord. And if any transcendental nomenclature for the absolute personality of Godhead is to be accepted, it should be the name Krishna, meaning all attractive. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has affirmed in many passages that he is the original personality of Godhead. And this was confirmed by Arjun, who cited great sages like Narad, Vyas, and many others. Also in the Padma Puran, it is stated that of the innumerable names of the Lord, the name Krishna is the principal one. Therefore, although the name Vasudev indicates the plenary portion of the personality of Godhead, and although all the different forms of the Lord are identical with Vasudev, in this text, Vasudev principally indicates the divine son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Sri Krishna is always meditated upon by the Paramahansas, those who are most perfect in the renounced order of life. Vasudeva, or Lord Sri Krishna, is the cause of all causes, and everything that exists is an emanation from him. How this is so is explained in later chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna, Bhakti, can you just pause?
Yes.
Okay, so what I wanted to mention is that sometimes people, or what do you call it, the way of composing transcendental literature is different from the way of composing an academic literature. So the way of composing transcendental literature is to present or combine information in a manner that accomplishes the goal of that knowledge. So we have, I mean, if we look at Prabhupada, see, for example, in academic literature, you need to have newer and newer and newer and newer information, right? It is not repetitive. But whereas transcendental literatures are repetitive. Repetitive in the sense that you'll, for example, in the Bhagavatam, you'll find prayers by, for example, in the Krishna book, 10th canto, you'll find so many prayers. You'll find prayers by the personified Vedas. You'll find prayers by the demigods. You'll find prayers by Lord Brahma. You'll find prayers by Indra. Like that, you'll find so many prayers. Prayers by Akrura. You have so many prayers. And in the prayers, you may have the same knowledge being repeated. Of course, every prayer has certain unique elements also to it, but there are many common elements of the prayer. And if we just examine what we're reading currently, I'm sure that all of you would know that we have read this. It's not that some new information is being presented. Many of the things that are being spoken here, we already know, right? So then what are we actually trying? What are we trying to do by studying teachings of Lord Chaitanya or any of the other books? It's not, we are not studying these books to get new information. Rather, we are studying these books to cut through our illusion. Like, for example, let's say that there is a big hard knot which cannot be untied. Very big, gigantic hard knot. It cannot be untied. So then what do? You take a knife and you cut that knot. And you keep on doing the same thing. You cut it and 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 cut it. And as you're cutting, you're going deeper and deeper into it. But you're using the same knife only, no? You're not changing your knives. You don't need newer and newer and newer knives. So you need that knife to cut. So as you keep cutting, at the end of it, the knot gets untied or whatever, it gets broken. Vidyate hridayagantis chidyante sarva samshayaha. Vidyate hridayagantis chidyante sarva samshayaha. So there is a big knot in our heart. The knot of material identification, the knot of material consciousness. Therefore, spiritual literatures are presented in a manner, it is like a knife. So we have to hear the spiritual literatures so that they act like this. That's why it's called the sword of knowledge. So with that sword of knowledge, we have to cut through. It's like it's very thick. Since time immemorial, this very huge, thick layer of of illusion. So you have to really cut through them, or you could say chop through them. That may be a more simpler example. Like, let's say you have a pile of something, a substance. Then what do? Okay, you can cut through one layer. Okay, then throw away that layer. Then cut through another layer. Then throw away that second layer. Cut through another layer. Throw away that layer. Then cut through another layer. Then throw away that layer. Like that, you have to keep cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting unless you cut and you cut through all the layers of illusion. So the illusion is so strong. We see that even though today's class we may hear, we'll feel okay, one layer is cut off, but then illusion is still not gone. No, we are still acting in that consciousness of material identification. We are not fully through that. So again, you need to cut. So daily we hear Bhagavatam, we cut through these pieces of illusion. Finally, we destroy that whole illusion. So we should always be enthusiastic to hear these messages of Krishna. Of course, there is new information also. It is not that there is no new information. It's not like each time we hear about Krishna, it's like, okay, knife is a material substance. It's very limited in its analogy. It's the same thing. Every day is the same activity of cutting. But when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, each time we cut through, it appears special to us. Yeah, it's like that. So we should not wonder why is there so much, why is it so extensively repetitive? Because we have to so extensively cut through the knot of illusion. So we have to extensively hear repetitively. But each repetition, because it is not a material substance, each repetition provides a flavor. Each repetition provides a flavor. And not only does it provide a flavor, but it also cuts through illusion. So it's dual function it has got. It provides a distinct flavor. The same, I mean, like for example, there are like, how do you say, there are unlimited flavors of the spiritual world. Nava rasa. It gives a different flavor, although it is the same substance in terms of knowledge, but it has got mundane. Okay, this is information which we already know. This is not information. Knowledge which appears externally repetitive. Each time you are coming into contact with Krishna, and Krishna is ever fresh. So yes, we may have heard all these things before, but each time we hear it, there is that freshness, and each time we hear it, there is a layer of illusion that is being cut off. Okay, I just wanted to mention this because if we see, we have studied Nectar of Instruction, we have studied Nectar of Devotion, now we're studying teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So many times, many of these things which we're reading, we have heard it before, but we are still eager to hear it more and more, again and again. Any thoughts, questions, reflections?
Yes, Prabhuji, very right. Of course, it is a repetition, but we also have different situations every day to which these, when we apply what we are learning. So it is a new learning still every time. The same thing we are repeating. The subject matter is the same, but our application to our lives over different situations is changing. So it is a new learning every time when we apply it, the same knowledge.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. No, the reason that I'm saying this is because the nature of the mind is to look forward to something new. But the intelligence, that's where the intelligence has to come into the picture. This is called the buddhi yoga, right? What is the meaning of buddhi yoga? You use your intelligence. You use your intelligence to defy the mind. The mind thinks in a certain way. It feels in a certain way. It wills in a certain way. So we have to change the thinking, feeling, and willing. For us, repetition is the new normal, as they say. So because it is not the mundane repetition. Each time you repeat, you understand better of that same knowledge. It is better, it is more fresh. Although the information is the same. Information is the same, right? You're reading the same thing, you with this Bhagavad Gita verse, everything is the same, but information is the same. But the as Prabhupada explains, there is what is it? In the beginning of the chapter he says that, and then there is science, right? There's information, knowledge, and there is science. So then science means that knowledge, that information that when we hear, because it is conscious information, it is not dead information. It's conscious information. We only know about dead information in this world, but this is not dead information. This is conscious information. So conscious information has got a different characteristic than dead information. So each time you interact with a conscious living entity, it's different. So what to speak about the supremely conscious living entity, which is Krishna, who is described as Navanava Rasa. So because it is conscious information, each encounter with the conscious information is different. And this is supremely conscious information. So each encounter with the supremely conscious information is different. How do we know it? When we keep hearing it, we'll see, hey, this is a different experience, like that. But if we read the same thing, like F is equal to ma, I remember I like physics. So when I was in high school or college, or even now when I think of mechanics and equation, I don't same. It's just the same. It may be interesting, but it's the same. It's the same. Nothing new. But Krishna conscious is not like that. It's conscious information. So each time it gives a different experience, rasa.
Reinforces it. And when we repeat the same thing, then its meaning also enhances. You know, when we repeat the same
Exactly.
knowledge to others, then the flavor, it adds to the, you know, to the essence. It's more not.
So just like Krishna is unlimited, all information about him is also unlimited, unlimitedly meaningful. So we can say, okay, we know the meaning of this verse. No, we don't know, because the verse is unlimitedly meaningful in a non-contradictory way, of course, because it is conscious, supremely conscious information. So it is unlimitedly meaningful. So each time we hear, we are delving into one more level of meaning of the same information. Any other thoughts or reflections? Someone else wants to share something. Rukmini Arisevani Mataji, yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please have my humble obeisances. Prabhuji, yes, it is so good to you give the analogy like Nityam Bhagat Sevaya, how it's, time since time immemorial, that, there are so many, anything, they have so many layers. So every time we hear, we just cut that with the weapon of knowledge, the ignorance, and we go ahead. And how beautiful Mataji said that, yes, Kathin Tastamam Nityam Tishanti Charamanti. So whenever we hear about Krishna, we meditate, we talk with the devotees, and yes, we also feel the same bliss. And that bliss, as you take that Krishna is now, the rasa is ever increasing. So that this is also getting increasing every time. So it's ever, ever fresh, ever new. So whenever we hear the same pastime so many times, since we get the so many,
It's
it's
unlimitedly
like
meaningful.
science
Yeah.
and the real life. Yes, yes, and we get the knowledge and the realization both. So it is really good. Yes, it turns when we hear the same thing, but yes, it's not like just hearing same thing. So it get into practicality, it get into realization. So Vidya turns into like that. So it is really like this. Thank you so much. It's really very nice
Are you in
analogy
Vrindavan?
that yes, we are cutting.
Are you in
No,
Vrindavan?
no, today, no, not today, Prabhuji. Yesterday only I came to Delhi. I had an appointment with the doctor. So I came.
Okay.
Tomorrow there is a Vyas Puja of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Swami Maharaj in ISKCON Delhi. Then I'll go back to
We
Vrindavan,
had the
Prabhuji.
Vaspaja today here because Ekadashi is today in Mayapur.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your realization. Okay. I mean, I was just thinking that because last class, this class, the class before that, there's a lot of this philosophy that's going on. I just wanted to share some insight so that all of you can remain, as it says, we should hear the Bhagavatam with rapt attention. Okay, so let's try to resume and remain rapt here with rapt attention.
Shall I continue, Prabhuji?
Yes, Manju.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes Srimad Bhagavatam as the spotless Purana because it contains transcendental narrations of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The history of Srimad Bhagavatam is also very glorious. Sri Vyasadeva, drawing on his mature experience of transcendental knowledge, compiled it under the instructions of Sri Narada Ji, his spiritual master. Vyasadeva had compiled all the Vedic literatures, the four Vedas, the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra, the Puranas, and the Mahabharata. Yet he was not satisfied. His dissatisfaction was observed by his spiritual master, and thus Narad advised him to write about the transcendental activities of Lord Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna's transcendental activities are specifically described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the canto considered to contain the substance of the whole work. One should not approach the 10th canto immediately, but should approach it gradually by developing knowledge of the subject matters first presented. Generally, a person with a philosophical mind is inquisitive to learn of the origin of the creation. He sees the night sky and naturally asks, what are the stars? How are they situated? Who lives there? And so on. All these inquiries are quite natural for a human being because his consciousness is more developed than the animals. In answer to such inquiries, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam says that the Lord is the origin of the creation. He is not only the creator, but the maintainer and annihilator as well. The manifested cosmic nature is created by at a certain period by the will of the Lord. It is maintained for some time, and finally it is annihilated by His will. Thus, He is the supreme will behind all activities. Of course, there are atheists of various categories who do not believe in the Creator, but that is due only to their poor fund of knowledge. The modern scientists create Sputniks, and by some arrangement or other, they are thrown into outer space to fly for some time under the control of a scientist far away. All the universes and the innumerable planets within them are similar to such Sputniks, and they are all controlled by the personality of Godhead. In the Vedic literature, it is said that the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is the chief among all living personalities. All living beings, from the first created being, Brahma, down to the smallest ant, are individual living entities. And above Brahma, there are many other living beings with individual capacities. The personality of Godhead Himself is also a living being, as much as individual as other living beings. As much an individual as other living beings. For the Supreme Lord is the supreme living being with the greatest mind and the supermost inconceivable energies in great variety. If a man's mind can produce a Sputnik, we can very easily imagine that a mind higher than man's can produce wonderful things far superior to man-made Sputniks. A reasonable person will accept this argument, but stubborn, obstinate people will not. Srila Vyasadeva at once accepts the Supreme Mind as Parameshwara, the Supreme Controller, and offers his respectful obeisances to him. As stated in Bhagavad Gita and all other scriptures written by Srila Vyasadeva, that Parameshwara is Sri Krishna himself. This is specifically stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord Himself says that there is no Paratattva, Samam Bonam, other than Him. Therefore, the author at once worships the Paratattva, Krishna, whose transcendental activities are described in the 10th canto. Unscrupulous persons go at once to the 10th canto, especially to the 5th chapter. Especially to the 5 chapters in which Srila Vyasadeva has kindly described the Lord's Rasa dance. However, this portion of Srimad Bhagavatam is the most confidential part of that great literature.
It's called the Rasa Panchadhyay. It's called the Rasa Panchadhyay. The 5 chapters dealing with the Rasa dance.
Rasa Panchadhyay.
Now I'm just saying, Pancha Adhyaya means 5 chapters. These are called the Rasa Panchadhyay, this particular portion. 5 chapters. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Unless one is thoroughly accomplished in the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, one is sure to misunderstand the Lord's worshipable transcendental pastimes in the rasa dance and his loving dealings with the gopis. This subject matter is highly spiritual and technical, and only liberated personalities who have gradually attained the stage of Paramahansas can transcendentally relish the worshipable rasa dance. Therefore, Srila Vyasadeva gives the reader a chance to gradually develop in spiritual realization before actually relishing the essence of the pastimes of the Lord. Thus, at the beginning, Vyasadeva purposefully invokes the Gayatri mantra with the word Dhimahi. The Gayatri mantra is specially meant for spiritually advanced people. When one attains success in chanting the Gayatri mantra, he can enter into the transcendental position of the Lord. But in order to chant the Gayatri mantra successfully, one must first acquire the Brahminical qualities and become perfectly situated in the mode of goodness. From that point, one can begin to transcendentally realize the Lord, his name, his fame, his qualities, etc. Srimad Bhagavatam is a narration dealing with the Swarup form of the Lord, which is manifested by his internal potency. This potency is distinguished from the external potency, which has manifested the cosmic world within our experience. Srila Vyasadeva makes a clear distinction between the internal and external potencies in the very first verse of the first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. In that verse, he says that the internal potency is factual reality, whereas the external manifested energy in the form of material existence is temporary and illusory, no more real than a mirage in the desert. Water may appear present in a mirage, but real water is somewhere else. Similarly, the manifested cosmic creation appears to be reality, but it is simply a reflection of the true reality which exists in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, there are no mirages. Absolute truth is there. It is not here in the material world. Here, everything is relative truth, with one apparent truth depending upon another. This cosmic creation results from an interaction of the three modes of the material nature. The temporary manifestations are so created as to present an illusion of reality to the bewildered mind of the conditioned soul, who appears in so many species of life, including higher demigods like Brahma, Indra, Chandra, and so on. In fact, there is no reality in the manifested world, but there appears to be reality because of the true reality in the spiritual world, where the personality of Godhead eternally resides with his transcendental paraphernalia. The chief engineer of a complicated construction does not personally take part in the construction itself, but it is he only who knows every nook and corner of the construction, because everything is carried out under his direction only. In other words, he knows everything about the construction, directly and indirectly. Similarly, the personality of Godhead, who is the supreme engineer of this cosmic creation, knows very well what is happening in every nook and corner of the cosmic creation, although activities appear to be performed by someone else. In actuality, from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, no one is independent in the material creation. The hand of the Supreme Lord is everywhere. All material elements, as well as all spiritual sparks, are but emanations from him only. Whatever is created in this material world is a result of the interaction of these two energies, material and spiritual, which emanate from the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna Vasudeva. A living entity known as a chemist can manufacture water in the laboratory by mixing hydrogen and oxygen. But in reality, the living entity works under the direction of the Supreme Lord, and all the materials he uses are supplied by the Lord. Thus, the Lord knows everything directly and indirectly in minute details, and he is fully independent as well. He can be compared to a gold mine, and the objects within the cosmic creation can be compared to ornaments made from that gold, such as the gold rings, gold necklaces, and so on. The gold ring and necklace are qualitatively one with the gold in the mine, but quantitatively, the gold in the mine and the gold in the ring or necklace are different. The complete philosophy of the Absolute Truth, therefore, centers about the fact that the Absolute Truth is simultaneously one with and different from his creation. Nothing is absolutely equal to the Absolute Truth, but at the same time, nothing is independent of the Absolute Truth. Conditioned souls, from Brahma, the engineer of this particular universe, down to the insignificant ant, are all creating something, but none of them are independent of the Supreme Lord. The materialist wrongly thinks that there is no creator but his own good self. But this misconception is called Maya or illusion. Due to his poor fund of knowledge, the materialist cannot see beyond the purview of his imperfect senses. Thus, he thinks that matter automatically takes its own shape independent of a conscious background. This is refuted by Srila Vyasadeva in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. As stated before, Vyasadeva is a liberated soul, and he compiled this book of authority after attaining spiritual perfection. Since the complete whole or the Absolute Truth is the source of everything, nothing is independent of him. In one sense, everything that exists is the body of the Absolute Truth. Any action or reaction of a part of a body becomes a cognizable fact to the embodied soul. Similarly, since the creation is the body of the Absolute Truth, then everything in the creation is known to the Absolute, both directly and indirectly. In the Shruti mantra, it is stated that the Absolute Whole or Brahma is the ultimate source of everything. Everything emanates from him, everything is maintained by him, and at the end, everything enters into him again. That is the law of nature. This is confirmed in the Smriti mantra. There it is said that at the beginning of Brahma's millennium, the source from which everything emanates is the Absolute Truth or Brahman, and that at the end of that millennium, the reservoir into which everything enters is that same Absolute Truth. Material scientists haphazardly take it for granted that the ultimate source of this planetary system is the sun, but they are unable to explain the source of the sun. In the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, the ultimate source is explained. According to the Vedic literature, Brahma is the creator of this universe. But because he had to meditate to receive the inspiration for such creation, he is not the ultimate creator. As stated in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahma was taught Vedic knowledge by the personality of Godhead. There it is said that the Supreme Lord inspired Brahma, the secondary creator, and enabled him to carry out his creative functions. In this way, the Supreme Lord is the supervising engineer. The real mind behind all creative agents is the absolute personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:10, Sri Krishna himself states that it is he only who superintends the creative energy Prakriti, the sum total of matter. Thus, Sri Vyasadeva worships neither Brahma nor the sun, but the Supreme Lord who guides both Brahma and the sun in their creative activities. The Sanskrit words Abhigya and Swarat appearing.
Madhi, can you just pause?
Yes, sir.
Anyone has anything to share, or anything in particular about whatever you read so far? Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah.
So it was just going in my mind the three main verses of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1, 2, and 3. That how that Tene Brahma Hidayadika Vemu Yanti Yachurya. First
Yeah.
verse and the four verses of Chatushloki Bhagavatam, which first of all Krishna spoke to Brahmaji. So these
Okay.
were going on in my mind. So I was able to relate all that with whatever we read.
Yeah. What is happening here is that he's explaining 111. Actually, it may appear like a very okay. Prabhupada also has given a long purport, but as I explained in an earlier class, Jiva Goswami has given 59 pages of purport to just that one first verse. Similarly, Baladev Vidyabhushan also explains it in great detail. So the point is that what is it? For example, Prabhupada says that the conception of God in our system is very detailed. For us, God is not just some controller or who has someone competitors and things like that. He's not just that. He is the cause of all causes. So even if he has a competitor, the source of his energy is also God. Of course, he does not have any equal or greater. But when we say competitors, like for example, Kamsa or anybody else, Hiranyakashipu, but their source of power is also coming from him. That's why Prahlad Maharaj says no. That he tells his father, "What have you learned? Where did you? The source of my power and source of your power are the same. Source of everyone's power is Vishnu." So like that. So this whole first verse of the Gayatri Mantra, first verse of the Bhagavatam, in fact, explains the Lord's internal character. The Lord's primary characteristics and his marginal characteristics. Marginal characteristics refer to those characteristics of the Lord in relation to the material world. Material world, first of all, is only one-fourth of the Lord's creation, and only 10% of all the living entities live here. So this is not like the main description of the Lord, how he creates the universes. It's a marginal thing. But because we are living in this material world, so therefore there is it's explained in great detail because of our point of reference. But from the point of view of the Lord, these are marginal characteristics. These are not the primary characteristics of God, how he creates this material world and all these kind of things. Of course, as Prabhupada has warned us, we cannot think from that perspective and dismiss these topics as not relevant. No, they're relevant. They mentioned they're relevant because we are conditioned. So, what do you say? First of all the pastimes of the Lord are absolute. It's only a question of what is core and what is marginal. So, in the first verse of the Bhagavatam, the last two lines refer to the marginal characteristics. Sorry, the last two lines refer to the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. The last two lines refer to the primary characteristics of the Lord, and the first two lines refer to the marginal characteristics of the Lord. So that is what that basically this whatever you read so far is just an explanation of 111, and it is a very very big subject matter. It explains. It is our definition of God. So it is not a small thing. God is not a small thing to be defined. He's a supreme person, and to define him takes you need a comprehensive effort. You need a very detailed effort. So that is what we see here: a comprehensive, detailed explanation of who. I mean, a comprehensive, detailed definition of God. Very exhaustive definition. Any
Thank
other
you.
thoughts? Yeah, reflections. Jyoti.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. One
Hare-
thing which I realized was that like in day-to-day life, we know things, but when we read, that thing comes to the point of realization and it gets processed. So we are able to think on that, the manifestations of Krishna and all the like qualities in a deeper way, and it's very nice to realize that.
Yes. Satam prasangan mama virya samvidyo bhavanti hrit karna rasayana katha. So, in the association of devotees, when we hear the topics of the Lord, bhavanti hrit karna rasayana katha. So this is the rasayana means tonic. This is the expression that is used in the Bhagavatam. That hrit karna rasayana, which means this is a rasayana, the tonic for the heart and the ear. Hrit karna. Hrit is the heart. Karna is the ear. Hrit karna rasayana. So, mama virya samvido, the glorious activities of the Lord, which includes the activities of his creation, are hrit karna rasayana. So our heart is filled with what is called the bhava roga, the disease of material existence. So when we hear this hrit karna, rasa ayana is a term and used in Ayurveda for rasayana refers to a very tasty kind of a medicine which cures some diseases. So the disease of the heart, or the bhava roga, the knot in the heart, the disease called the knot in the heart, can be cured. Of course, apart from chopping with the sword of knowledge, you have. I mean, these are different expressions that are used. The Bhagavatam, Hrit Karna Rasayana. So it is a tonic for the ear, because the ear is filled with all kinds of nonsense sounds. So when it is filled with the topics of Krishna in the Bhagavatam, it is like a rasayana, very tasty medicine. Similarly, it also, our heart is filled with nonsense, garbage. So this rasayana, it cures the disease of the heart and the mind.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay, it is 5 o'clock. Actually, for the last couple of weeks and another couple of weeks, I have to leave at 5 o'clock because there is a class that I have to take. And once that is over, then again I can extend it till 5:30. But for the next 2 weeks, you have to forgive me. Okay, so we'll resume again next week with the teachings, readings, teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Thank you all very much for joining. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namaha. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.